what comes in a kit when you get the kit. So here is the box. Can you go to the side camera, Ella? And uh-oh. I don't know. Can you guys still hear me? Debbie, can you hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you. We just can't see you.
Can't see. Okay.
Now we can see you. We can see an overhead. Oops.
Okay, let me just check one camera. See if it timed out. There we go. Our camera just timed out. Okay, so here is the box that you'll get in a kit, and it's full of, this one has all of these awesome size. These are the 4-ounce bottles that we're going to be using today. So it has a rainbow of colors. You can see all the colors that come in it right here across the top. And then it also comes with this little packet. And inside this packet, you have a table cover, which is like just a big plastic sheet. And then you're going to have gloves and bands for tying your tie-dye. Okay, so and these bands are awesome. I'm going to show you in a minute. Then you also have this little instructions book. And if you've never tie-dyed before, it's got a few different ways of tying that are explained right there for you on this little sheet. And I'm going to show you some of those and some that aren't on there today during our class. So I'm going to pull out the colors we're going to be using. I love Halloween. At my house, we love Halloween. We love dressing up. We love playing with color and getting all crazy with our face paint and everything. And so we're going to do some fun Halloween projects today. Okay, I just need my purple. Okay. All right, I'm going to set this box aside. And we're going to start today with a t-shirt, because I find that with tie-dye, most common things people start with is doing a t-shirt. And so I'm going to pull in this white shirt right here. So this shirt is 100% cotton, but these DIY tie-dyes, they do not necessarily have to be used on 100% cotton. They can be used on a variety of different materials, which is an awesome thing, because most of the tie-dye that I've used in the past are the powders, and you mix with water, and it has to be hot water, and then you have to wait for it all to dissolve, and they can only take on 100% cotton. But with these, they're all pre-mixed. It's already fluid in that bottle. They're heavily pigmented and really bright, vibrant, beautiful colors. So I have pre-washed and dried this t-shirt, and I like to do that with everything that I'm dyeing, because when manufacturers make all these beautiful things for us to buy in stores, they don't want them to get dirty in the store. So they put this chemical on them. It's called sizing, and it keeps it, like if the shirt falls on the ground or lots of people touch it, then it resists all of that dirt, but then it also resists our dye. So we don't want any of that sizing left on here. So I've pre-washed and dried everything that we're going to use today, and I highly recommend doing that. With these dyes, if you've ever tie-dyed before, there is a product called soda ash, and that is a chemical that you can soak your fabrics in that you're going to be dyeing, and it kind of roughs up the fibers so it takes the dye better. I don't use soda ash with these dyes. I have found I don't need it at all. So you're going to fall in love with these just the same as I am. Okay, so first things first, I have my shirt. And I found with these dyes, because they're so heavily saturated and super pigmented, I don't generally start with a completely wet shirt. So you can, and I'll show you what that looks like after this. I'll show you some t-shirts that I've done in different ways. My favorite method with these dyes is to just use a mister spray bottle and have it be like misted damp, not damp, wrung out damp, but just misted. So I'm going to mist my t-shirt. Another thing I like about this is if I am working on tying and I realize that it's getting dry, then I can just add a little bit more water. Okay, I'm going to flip it. And I'm going to do this side too. Okay. I'm just kind of feeling it with my hand just to kind of see, to make sure I got pretty good coverage. Okay. Now we're ready to start tying. And this is the fun part. Okay, so these bands are the bands that come in the kit. And they are super strong, awesome bands. And you'll see in a second, I'm going to tug really hard on them and they're not going to break at all. The first method I'm going to teach you of tying is called a bullseye. And that's what is on my apron here. I'm going to step back so you can see. So this is multiple bullseyes, these circles that are going on, right? Okay, so we're going to do one of those. And since it's Halloween, I'm going to make a moon with some bats flying on it on the shirt. Okay, so I'm going to start right in the center. And I'm going to just pull up. And this first part is going to be my moon. So mine is about 3 inches. You can choose how big of a circle you want for your center moon. I found on this size shirt, this is a medium shirt, I like about 3 inches. And I'm going to just tie this band. And you can see, like, I can pull on that band really hard. They're really good quality. If you ran out of bands, you could, of course, use any rubber band to do this. But I really like the ones that come in the kit. They're really nice. Okay, so now we've got our moon. So that's going to be our moon section. Then I want a little dividing section that's kind of like the rim to my moon. So I'm going to go about 1 inch down. I like to pull my bands super tight because then I get more of that white space. Wherever I'm putting the bands is where you're going to end up with pleats and folds and parts that stay white. Okay, there's that one. Okay, so now we're starting to get an amoeba looking shape here. That's how it should look. Now I'm gonna do a bigger outer ring. So I want it to be like almost to the edges of my shirt. So I'm gonna pull it up maybe 3 or 4 inches again, maybe even a little more than the moon, like 4 inches probably. And I'm gonna add the bands again. Okay, so that's my center moon shape. But I also want to do some little mini bullseyes out here on this part that's just hanging out here. So I'm going to mist it a little bit because as I've tied, it's gotten a little bit drier and I just want to make sure it stays wet for these little mini bullseyes. And I'm going to do the same exact process. I'm just going to pick it up and do a little mini one.
Hey,
and I've got, yes.
Is there any difference between the bands you're using and regular rubber bands? Is there a reason why you'd want to use something different?
No, I don't think so. These are just really strong ones. I don't know where they found these awesome ones to source in this kit, but they are amazing strong. I have hardly ever broken one. And if anyone has ever tie-dyed before, they will know that sometimes you just snap your band. They're nice and thick ones. The color of your band doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. You can use anything. You'll be sad when the ones in your kit run out, though. I'll tell you that once you've used them. Okay, I'm just going to keep going with my little mini bullseyes. I'm doing up here on the sleeve. Now we really have some sort of amoeba creature happening. That's all right. That's what we want it to look like. Okay, I'm going to do one more right over here. Okay, all right, so there's our little amoeba guy, can stand up on his own. Okay, and I'm gonna give it just a little bit of a mist again, and I'm gonna mist the underside, because I find this part that's exposed that's not bound up, gets a little bit dry while I'm adding dye. Okay, so now I'm gonna bring in my tray, and this is just for convenience. You don't need one of these technically to tie-dye, but I've found, I was using it when I was working in studio because I didn't want to get dye everywhere while I was working. And I realized I really love working with it. And it's just a baking sheet that came with this little cookie cooling rack in it. And I found that keeps my dye all contained and I can just carry that over to my sink and rinse it out nice and easily. When I'm working at home, I do like to work close to my sink, and I don't have that in my studio here, so you're going to see some workarounds that I have. I like to work near my sink. I like to protect my workspace, wear an apron, and then I'm going to wear gloves. So the gloves that come in the kit are clear, but I have busted through all of the gloss that came through the kit. So these are just some more that I have that I'm going to use today, because now we're going to get messy and colorful. Okay. All right. So here's my first tip about adding color. When I'm doing from light to dark, I try to designate one hand is going to be for touching the light parts and one hand is going to be for touching the dark parts, because the biggest thing that I do that bugs me is when I get my dark on my light, or, you know, and I get it splashed in the wrong place, and inevitably that's going to happen sometimes, but we're going to do our best to try to prevent it. So I'm going to make this hand my dark hand, and I'm going to hold the dark stuff with this hand, and you'll see in a minute why. Okay, I'm going to start at the lightest, and I'm just give this a good shake. Again, it's all pre-mixed and ready to go. And wait till you see how vibrant this color is. So I'm going to hold here on my band. I also try to kind of not move my piece around too much on my tray, because then I might accidentally get some of the dye transferred. So I'm going to just lay it across there. Look how vibrant that is. So pretty. When I've used other dyes before, I've found that I had to put a ton on to get really good saturation of color. And with these, you just don't need to do that. It's just like, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm barely sprinkling it out. Just a tiny bit at a time. I do want my moon all the way yellow, so I don't want a lot of white left in it. So I am going to make sure I get all the way to the tip. Okay. And there's the yellow. Okay. Then the next line I'm going to do, on this one, I'm also going to be working between my bands. So sometimes you lay color across your bands, sometimes you lay it between your bands. And this time I'm going to go between my bands. Okay, the next color I want to use is this slate color, which is a blacky gray color. And that's going to be my divider between my sky and my moon. Look how rich that black is. Like, I don't know if you've ever used other dyes, but sometimes your blacks are really, really gray when they come out. And I love how pigmented that is. So pretty. So
Shannon,
deep and rich.
Shannon, can you remind all of us the name of the tie-dye kit that you're using?
This one it's Tie DIY, and this one, I don't know what differentiates the kits. This one just says Tie DIY tie-dye kit, and this one has, the first color on this scale is geranium, and the last one is slate. So there are 3 or 4 different boxes of dye, some that have more colors in smaller bottles, and then these that have the larger bottles. But each of them has a really good rainbow spectrum, so I think no matter which one you find at your Michael's store, you can do something similar to what I am doing, because they'll have a similar color in there. Okay, last color is going to be my blue. Okay, and I'm going to add that right here. And this is the one I'm going to get kind of messy with, because this is going to be my sky that's going to go all the way out around. And I'm going to go over the band even, and out here and on my little mini bullseyes. Okay, sometimes what I'll do is, to protect my yellow, I'll stand this up like that. Because see, now my yellow is up nice and high, and it's not going to run the risk of getting as many splatters on it. Okay. This is just my blue again. Now, if I wanted to and I didn't have the tray, I could dip that down in there and pick up some more of the dye from down below. This one, I'm not too concerned about being super precise, because I want it to have that mottled night sky with clouds in the sky kind of look, right? Okay, so I'm going to add some more down in there. Then I'm going to come back in with my slate, add some darkness down here too. Really, this part's fun, because every time you do it, you don't know what it's going to look like when you open it up. And I can make a set of shirts that all feel really similar. Like, I've made this bat shirt before, and they all feel similar, but they all have a unique little characteristic to them. Okay, so I'm going to just flip this, and see how I have a lot of white going on down here at the bottom? So I'm just going to add a little bit more. This is that spot that I didn't bind. And I'm just going to add a little bit more, being careful to keep my yellow tip out of the way there. Okay, and you can leave as much white as you like. Like, if you like a lot of white in your shirt, you can leave a lot of white. And I'll show you some that I did that way as well. Okay, we're getting messy here. All right, so now what's the next step? Okay, the next step is to let it set. And my favorite thing to use is just I recycle my Michaels bags to let it set. So you can use a Ziploc bag. You could wrap it up in the plastic tablecloth if you weren't going to continue to dye. But I always pick it up by the bottom. Again, I try to keep that yellow tip nice and clean by sticking it in my bag first. And then I just kind of wrap this around and make a little bundle. And so why you put it in there is you want it to stay wet for a little while on the fabric so that that dye can really set in there. Now, here's one thing that varies. In your instruction book, it'll say to let it sit 6 hours minimum. I've found after testing with these dyes and using them in a zillion different projects, you only need 30 minutes to an hour to let it set. It does not need to set for a full 6 hours. If you do let it set for a full 6 hours, that dye is so pigmented, it will bleed under your bands and you'll get less white. So if that's the look you're going for, let it set longer. If you want more white, check it at 30-minute point, okay? All right, so I have one down here. I'm gonna set this aside. And I have one down here. I'm gonna get a baby wipe and kind of, you can see why it's good to have gloves, right? But this washes off your skin really easily. It cleans even off of other fabrics easily, as long as you catch it when it's wet and it hasn't set in really good. But I'm gonna just clean these so I don't accidentally touch my other shirt in a spot that I don't want to, okay? I'm gonna move this tray out of the way. That's why I like working near my sink normally, because I make lots of messes. Okay, I'm gonna open this up and pull this out. And I did this one just before we came in here, so maybe about an hour ago. Okay. And now I just find a clean spot on my bag. I'm going to do that so that I don't get dye on my work surface, just because I want to keep it clean while I'm working. I'm going to clean my glove again because now I want to touch. I'm going to cut off the bands and I don't want to get black on my yellow. Okay, so this is just a regular pair of scissors and I just carefully loop it underneath one of the layers of rubber band. I don't know if you can see that. And I just snap it. And if you just cut one layer of rubber band, careful not to cut your shirt. So that's why I lift it way up high and snap it. Then the rest will usually just come right off. Okay. So you can see, even though I didn't let that set a full 6 hours, I got some more bleeding in there across. So I'm not going to have a ton of white on this one, but that's okay. They still look really cool. So I would go a shorter time, maybe 30 minutes, or mist it a little bit less. Okay, that one's gonna need a little help coming undone. Make sure I got all my bands off. One more. These are now my tie-dye scissors because they have been stained by all the bands I've cut. But they wipe off too. They just clean up really easily. Okay, I think that's all the bands. Okay, so we're gonna do a reveal. Ooh, ah. So there's our moon. And you can see the little baby ones down here. Those are some of those baby bullseyes. Didn't it turn out great? Even without a lot of white, I still think it looks really awesome. Those white spots ended up looking like clouds, kind of. Okay, so now what do? This is the most important part of this whole class. With these dyes, these have to be heat set. So if I was to go in traditional tie dyeing, sometimes you'll go over and you'll rinse it after you unband it. Don't do that with these dyes, okay? So what we want to do is set this aside and let it air dry completely. I could go throw it in my dryer, but I found I prefer not to do that because then I have to clean out my dryer because the wet dye will transfer into the inside of your dryer. So I just hang it on a hanger and hang it outside on my patio or hang it up on my shower curtain rod and let it completely dry all the way. Then once it's completely dry, I'm going to take it down, and when it's dry, I'm going to put the dried shirt in my dryer and heat set it by running it on a cycle of about 25 minutes from medium high to high. Okay, and once you do that, you can wash and dry it as much as you want to. Just normally, like in your washer and dryer with your regular laundry detergent. So that heat setting process is really, really important. If I was to go get this wet right now, all this dye would come right out. But if I just let it air dry and then I heat set it for 25 minutes, it's permanent. So like I did that with this apron, and this apron is actually 100% polyester. So, and it's been washed and dried multiple times, and it still looks that vibrant and beautiful. Okay, I'm going to set this aside and let it hang dry. And we're going to do some movie magic, and I'm going to pull out one that I've already washed and dried. Got my space a little bit. So this one is one I did previously. This one had a lot more white in it, you can see. But I washed and dried it previously. And this is the back. So you have a mirror on the back of it, right? Okay, so now how do we make this look more like a moon? So what I've done is I just used my electronic cutting machine and some iron-on transfer. And these are just little iron-on transfer bats. So if you don't have an electronic die cutting machine, like a Cricut or a Silhouette, you can get the same look. You would just need to do it with a fabric pen, or you could hand cut. This shape is pretty simple. You could do an even more simple bat and hand cut the iron-on transfer, or you could use puff paint. I think that fabric paint would look really good. And sometimes, like on this one, you can see that I have a little spot right here where I kind of got some of the blue on my moon. So I might strategically place my bats to cover my dye spill. See how easy that is? Now you can't even tell it was there. So if you do splatter, there are ways you can fix it, okay? So then I would just place my bats where I like them. You can do them wherever you want to. And then using your heat press or iron, and again, if you want to use paint, you could do that, or fabric marker. Okay, and then I'm just gonna, I have a Cricut heat press, so I'm gonna just bring my Easy Press over here and use that. But while this is setting, does anyone have any questions for me?
I think everybody's just enjoying learning what you're doing.
Oh,
and
good.
Lots of comments about how great the shirt looks. And I think you're giving us some really good tips on some things that we can use if we don't have a cutting machine yet. So really cool.
Good, good. I love my cutting machine, but I know everybody doesn't, you know, not everyone has one. So I always try to give a alternative idea just in case.
Right.
Okay, I don't know if I let that heat set long enough, but we're gonna try it. Looks like it. Okay, then I'm just gonna peel this up. That's just the liner of the iron-on. And there we go. We have this awesome bat shirt.
Looks good.
How fun, right?
Yes.
And now if you wanted to, you could put bats on the back, or you could put trick or treat in this moon, or happy Halloween, or something else, or just leave it as is.
So we do have a question about, on that shirt, what was the trick to allow the bigger white parts as opposed to the other?
Yeah, so that you would want to do a little less dye and a little less of setting time in the bag. So I did that one before I came into the studio. So it might have actually sat for about an hour and a half. And the longer it sits, the more the dye will transfer under the bands, or just put a little bit less on. Like when you saw me on this when I was splattering it around on the bottom, you could leave a little bit more white down there. Don't cover it in as much dye. This is another shirt that I did. So you can see that it's similar, but different. So every time you're going to get a little bit different result. I want to show you a couple more that were done with the same technique. This one is a jack-o'-lantern. So I'm going to lay it down on the table. So this one was done the same way with the bullseye in the middle, but I did orange, purple, and then black. And then used my iron-on to make a jack-o'-lantern face. So that's another way that you could do it. And then I wanted to show you the difference between a really wet shirt. So this one was the misted, right? This one is the one that I misted. And so it was kind of damp. So my dye did move a little bit. This one was damp, where it was damp from the sink. And then I wrung it out, and then I did it. So you can see that there's barely any white on this one, okay? So that was working from completely damp shirt. And then this one is a completely dry shirt. I didn't even mist it at all. So this one is got a ton of white. So this one I didn't even spray bottle. I just did this one's actually a spiral, but I did my tying on a completely dry shirt, and then I got that look. But I love this one because doesn't that kind of look like a mummy, or it could be a spider web, like you could put a spider on it somewhere. I still love how it looks. So it just depends on what you want to do. If you want a lot of dye movement, go damp. If you want lots of white, go dry. And then adjust your set times a little bit. As you play with it, you'll get really used to it. I also wanted to show you this one because this one is a cotton poly shirt. And it's gray, it's not white. And these do work on other colors. So this one was done on the gray shirt. And you can see some of the gray came through down here on the bottom, and it looks really cool and mottled and old. And it worked just as good. This has been, all of these have been washed and dried, and that's how they look. This one was also damp when I did it. Okay, so on to the next project already. Okay, we're gonna do a couple trick-or-treat bags real quick. Because trick-or-treating is super fun, right? My youngest daughter said last year might be her last year, and we made her take us with her trick-or-treating so we could experience our youngest kid going trick-or-treating one last time. I don't know how thrilled she was about that, but. Okay, I'm gonna do the same thing. This is just a white canvas tote bag from Michaels. I pre-washed and dried it to get the sizing off of it. And now I'm just misting it. And this one I'm gonna do kind of an ombre candy corn look on. So I'm getting it pretty wet because I do want my dye to kind of move into each other in the colors, okay? And this one I'm gonna do a fan fold, okay? So like back in school when you folded paper fans, we're gonna do that same kind of thing where we go back and forth and back and forth. Okay, so now I'm gonna have my stripes moving up my bag, right? So I'm gonna tie my bands moving up from the bottom. So there's my bottom color. This is how you tie to get stripes. One of the ways you can get stripes. The fan fold stripe. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to do 3 colors. So I'm going to do 3 bands. And then I'm going to leave a little bit of white at the top for my candy corn so it can have that white top. And I want my handles to stay white too. That's why I'm leaving them out up there. Okay. I'm going to grab a new tray. I'm going to give this a little bit more mist. Because again, on this one, I want it to blend. I'm getting it pretty wet. Okay, time for gloves. We're going to get into color again. I always mist, and then I get my hand wet, and then I can't get my glove back on. I'm trying to do it. Last time I taught this class, I had trouble getting one of my gloves on one of the times. Yep. Okay, there we go. Okay, and I'm going to start with Poppy again, which is an orange-red color from this kit, but you could use any orange. But this is a nice deep red orange, and I'm just going to give it a shake. And I'm going to go across my bands this time so that hopefully I can get a white stripe. If I'm going to get one, it's pretty wet, so I might not get one, but I'm going to try and get a little bit of white right there. Okay, you can see I'm just barely sprinkling it on, and I'm going to cross my band this time to get that white line within the color. This one I'm kind of using a lot of dye too because again, I want that movement, right? And this fan fold way is really easy to see if you're getting it down in because I can just pull it open like that, kind of see down inside and see that I need to add more dye. Okay, now I'm going to show you an awesome trick with these dyes. I need an in-between that orange and that yellow, and I don't have it in this kit. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to just make a new color real quick. Okay, so I have a little plastic cup, and And I'm going to start with a little bit of my poppy. Okay. And then I'm going to shake this up again. This is my lemon color from the Bat Moon. And I'm just going to pour that in there too. Okay. And I'm going to get a stir stick and stir it up. Okay, let's see. It looks like I need a little more yellow. I'm going to go more. Okay, and you can see that they mix beautifully. So just use your color theory, right? Go back to elementary school and just blend and blend them. Okay, so now I have a lighter orange, and I'm going to use that here on this middle section. So I just took my two tones and mixed them together till I found a really pretty center. And I found you can do this like actually on here, like if I was to squirt and I squirted the dark red all the way up and then brought the yellow down over it. But I found that I like doing it this way, where I mix it in a cup. It just gives me a little bit more control as to what my final color is going to end up looking like. Okay, I'm going to let that bleed into each other. Okay. Okay, I'll set that aside. Okay. I'm going to make sure my hand's clean because now we have all this white stuff going on up here and I don't want to get that dyed with anything. Okay, and then the top color is going to be yellow, and I'm just going to go over the band a little bit. And when you're doing the ombre, you can make sure to blend over just a little bit. You can see I brought that orange down into the poppy, the orange we mixed, and then I'm bringing this one down into the orange we mixed as well, the yellow. Okay, now, okay, you remember the steps at this point? I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to put it in my Michaels bag, right? And I'm going to set it aside. And with these, I usually let them sit a little longer again because I want that nice transfer. 30 minutes to an hour, those like literally all you need. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside and I'm pull one out that's done. Okay, and after I cut all the bands, right, then we would hang it to dry. I'm just going to go over the steps because it's the most important part. You hang it to dry, you let it dry, air dry completely, and then you're going to put it in your dryer and heat set it for 25 minutes, medium high to high. Then you can wash and dry it like normal. Okay. All right, so this is what we have when we're done. Okay. So see how that bled up nice in there? You can see a little bit of the folds in there, but not too much, which is what I actually was going for on this bag. And then I'm not going to heat set it on there again, but this is just a phrase to show how you could use a phrase. This was cut out of iron-on material, and I would just iron that on the same way that I did the bats. And when I do that, I'm going to have this. Now you can see this one, I rolled my handles into my yellow. They were down like this. So you can see that's how I got that yellow up on my handles. Since this was the first one I made and I wasn't thinking about keeping my handles free. So now you have benefited from that, that oops on my part, but it kind of is cute up there anyway. So you just roll with it with tie-dye, right? And that's my final trick-or-treat bag, but I think it needs one more little thing. And that is some tassels. So I'm going to show you some quick tassels that we'll add, because this is another way that you can dye. And since I have this mixed already, I'm going to use this one I've already mixed, and I'm going to do a yellow one in here, okay? So I'm going to add a little bit of yellow. Oh, squeezing the bottle. There we go. Okay, probably should have put gloves on. And then I'm going to add a little bit of water to these dyes. Now, I don't always add water to them. You can see, like, look how little bit of yellow I put in there. I don't know if you can see that, maybe from the side camera. Oh, it might have timed out again, so just go to the overhead one. Okay, it's a tiny bit. It's like 1/8 of an inch of dye. And then I put a bunch more yellow in, or water in. And this will lessen the brightness of it a little bit, but because I'm not going to run my tassels through the washer and dryer most likely, I don't think that I need necessarily as heavy of pigment on these. And I just wanted them to soak it up a little bit better. It is pretty thick when you first pour it out of the bottle. So I like watering it down when I'm doing dip dyeing. So we're going to dip dye these tassels. So here's my little tassels. And all I did was wrap them around like a piece of cardboard, I think, when I made these, or you could use a tassel loom. And this is just 100% cotton yarn, but it would work on polyester yarn as well. So then I made my little tassels, and then all I'm going to do is just set them into my cup and let it soak it up. So I'm just going to tip the ends in and let it kind of soak it up in the cup. And you can see how fast, and look, even though I watered it down, look how bright that still is. It's awesome. I love this dye. And I love this. Now this is where it's messy. It's like milking a cow because you don't need all that excess in there. So I squeeze a little bit out. Okay, super messy. And then I'm just going to lay it on my tray to dry. Now these you could probably, the ones that I've done, I just let them dry like this completely. I didn't even put them in a bag, but you could put them in a bag and that might help them be a little bit more vibrant. Now we'll do the yellow one. Maybe we'll dip dye this one from the top. Going down. Just let it soak it in.
So Shannon, while you're soaking it, we've had a question about what if you're doing a whole bunch of projects, you've already let them air dry. Can you put them all in the dryer at the same time, or do you need to wait?
You can. I've put them all in at the same time. As long as there's no water going to touch them, they're good. And once they're completely dry, that's another reason why I like them to be completely dry before I heat set them in my dryer, because then I can put everything in at once. And that way they just, you know, they don't rub off on each other because they're completely dry. It's the water that makes the dye move. Okay, so there we have, I'm going to move these out of my way. Hopefully not spill on anything in here. And there we have our tassels. So all I would do is set these aside, let them dry, and then you can throw these in the dryer as well, or just put your heat press on them and set them, or just leave them. But in case they got wet or it rained or something trick-or-treating, I heat set mine in the dryer. And then this is what they look like when they're all done. This one I did do both the bottoms. I think that top dipped one, though, is going to be really cute. But that's what they look like. And look how cute they'll be. I'll try not to get this in my dye. But you just tie them on to the top of your trick-or-treat bag, and you have a cute little added tassel element on there. Fun, another way to use the dye that's really fun. Okay. What are we at on time? Oh, we're doing good. Okay. We're going to do another different style of a trick-or-treat bag, because I want to show you how to do the spiral. The spiral is a super fun way of tying, and it always is a wowie factor when you open it up. Clean up a little bit. Usually when I'm working at home, I keep a dish towel that I don't care about anymore. That is just my tie-dye towel. And then I can just use it. Okay. Oh, I wanted to show you, before I do that, I wanted to show you a couple more things I did with that stripe binding technique. So this is that same fan fold, but I did it from the corner. So I fan folded this way, okay, across the corner, kind of at an angle, and then I laid the color down, and that's how you got that kind of more diagonal stripe going on. And then these were also done in the stripe fashion. These are wings that I bought at Michael's from the costume section. They were just white like this with this cute iridescentness on them. And these are polyester as well. But I dyed them, and look how great they turned out. These have been washed and dried. So this one, I just kind of bunched it like this, and then tied the bands on, and then laid my color down. And since this is really thin fabric, they only had to set for maybe 30 minutes. And then I let them air dried them in the dryer, and then washed and dried them. These have all been washed and dried. And here's a pink version, pink and blue, done the same way. Isn't that fun? So you don't have to always do t-shirts and blank bags. Like this was an existing product that we just altered with the dye, which I wanted to make sure to show you because that's super fun. Okay, next bag. And this is a swirl technique. We're going to make a monster trick-or-treat bag. And this one's going to be really bundled up tight, so I'm going to spray it pretty liberally on both sides. Okay. And to tie this one, we're just going to literally start twisting it in a spiral. Okay, so I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to start turning it. So you can see my first turn there. I'll try to move my hand out of the way so you can kind of see it as it goes. See the spiral we're getting? Okay, I'm going to keep going. Then I'm going to kind of use my hands to keep it going around the outside. Okay, see our little spiral? It's even going to look better hopefully on the other side. Okay, and then all you do, this is like one of the easiest ways to bind for tie-dye, and it's super easy, but has a great wow factor. Okay, so now I'm just crisscrossing my bands to kind of hold this spiral together. And I'm going to do 3 on here. Then I'm going to adjust them so that my little wedges here are sort of equal in size. Doesn't have to be perfect, but kind of ish. Equal in size, okay? Oh, look, yeah, see now you can see the spiral on the other side really, really well. Okay, see that? Okay, then we're gonna add dye to it. Grab my gloves again. Okay, this one we're gonna do some purple, green, and black. Okay, and so the trick to these, get my tray, I almost forgot, we would have had dye everywhere. I'm going to get it really wet. Okay, the trick to these is just remembering where you're going to put your dye because you're going to work across from each other. Okay, so I'm going to start with purple, and I'm going to kind of put it in the wedges. I might not have taken the lid off of my purple. Oh, I did, but I left the little foam seal inside. So when you first get these, they are sealed, so you have to open them up and take out the little foam piece and the foil piece off of them. That's really stuck in my lid. Just get my hole clear. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, all right, now we have purple. Clean my hand. I swear, I just am like obsessive about trying to keep my glove clean so I don't get it everywhere in the wrong spots. So I'm gonna fill this little wedge with purple. And I'm going to go across to the other side and fill that little wedge with purple. And this is what's going to make our spiral. Okay, and then I'm going to flip it and do, since I did that side purple there, I'm going to do the same purple in the same little wedge from both sides. Okay. Put that down in there. Get it all nice and good. Okay, then we're going to do green. I didn't open this one at all. Brand new bottle. Okay. I'm going to do green here. Okay, then where do I do my green? Across the other side. And if you wanted to put more bands on and do more colors and more, leave yourself more little pie wedges to fill, you can. 3 is a good one to start with when you're learning, but you can do more. You just want to be careful you don't add too much color because you might end up with mud. Actually made a swirl t-shirt that looked really muddy, but then I just called it my Swamp Monster t-shirt, so it worked out anyway. Okay, and then my last wedge is my black. Okay, I'm gonna flip it. Okay, same process, right? So I've done my black. Now I just pick this up and I move it into a bag and let it set for 30 minutes to an hour. And then I would remove the bands and open it up, and let's see what we have when we do that. Okay, so this is what we ended up with. There's our nice spiral. Isn't that cool? So that wedge, you can see that that's how it was spiraled up like this. And you can see that the wedge across, the purple across, makes that nice spiral. And it spiraled on both sides. So you can pick which side you like the best to add. And then for this one, I'm going to add some monster eyes. So these are just eyes, again, that I cut from my Cricut, with my Cricut from Iron On. And I would just iron those on. And it looks like something like this in the end. Okay, so there's our monster bag with the spiral. And I wanted to show you the spiral in another color as well. So here's an orange spiral t-shirt. And this one you can see I started the spiral up at the top, like up near the sleeve, and spiraled it the same way, and I did the red, orange, and yellow like on the candy corn bag. So that's how that one turned out. Spiral, it's a really fun technique. All right, we have time for one more technique. And we're gonna make something,
So Shannon, we're just
you have a question, Debbie?
Yeah, we're just getting a couple questions. What if you want to have a different color or pattern on the back of the bag? Is there any way to do that?
No, I haven't really looked into that. I would have to maybe try some different things. Because of how the dye saturates straight through, everything I've done has been on both sides. But depending on your tying method, you'd have to figure out a way to keep your back completely separate. And I don't know if there's a way to do that or not, but that is a great question, and I will look into it. And maybe, Debbie, I could message you if I find an answer.
That would be great, and then I can.
Yeah, I will message.
Okay, sounds great.
Because I haven't tried, but I'd love to learn, because I've wondered that too, actually. Okay, last thing we're going to make is a tie-dyed pumpkin. So this is a little bit more non-traditional Halloween fun that we're going to have with our tie-dye. So this is a 6.5-inch pumpkin from Michaels, okay, and then I'm going to show you some different versions, but these are the fabrics that I'm using. So these are from Michaels. This one's costume silk, and this one is a Sherpa, so it's furry. I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of a furry. And we're going to end up with some awesome fabric that we're going to dye so that we can get pumpkins that are tie-dyed pumpkins, and I'll show you how to do that, okay? All right, so I wanted to show you what the packaging looks like so you can find it in your Michaels store, because they do have those fabrics there. This is the simplest form of binding that you are going to see today, okay? And this one ends up looking so cool. And I'm just going to start immediately with gloves because I'm not even going to use bands to bind this one. Okay, so I'm going to put my last pair of gloves on here. Okay, I'm going to mist it. This one I like really wet too. This Sherpa has kind of a nap to it, like it actually is like a fur. And so the dye tends to sit on the top of it a little bit. So I like to get it pretty wet. You could probably even do this one from a completely damp state where you get it wet in your sink and then wring it out. Okay, now this one is the scrunch technique. And literally, that is all you're going to do. You're just going to go like this. Okay, scrunch, scrunch, scrunch it up. Tuck in some parts, squish, 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 right? That's it. How easy was that? Okay, and we're going to use some more fun colors on this one. So I'm going to bring in my pink, my geranium. This one gets super messy, so I'm going to grab my pile of wipes because I like to try to keep my hands clean. I'm going to give it one more mist for good measure. Okay, and this one is just have fun splattering. Like this one is a really easy one for little kids. Like if you wanted even a small, like 5-year-old could probably do this with a little bit of help from mom or dad or grandma. Okay, and you just splatter it on. You just kind of let it go, right? Okay, here and there. And this one is also easy to get muddy, so be careful how much colors you put on. I'm going to do teal, and just careful where you place them a little bit, but I found this one I didn't leave a lot of white on, this other pumpkin that I showed you a second ago, but I found I kind of like to leave a little bit more white than I did on that one. That one was lucky that I didn't get mud. Okay, and I'm going to do yellow. I've done this same technique on a pair of shorts. Just scrunched it all up. You can scrunch it and use bands and bind it. I'm going to find my peach that I made before and add a little bit of that in. Okay. You can like put little pebbles in it and bind little pebbles in it to get another like kind of bubbly scrunched look. You really can just have fun. This is the easiest. You just scrunch it up, put it on. Okay, and then what I like to do on this Sherpa, you don't need to do this if it's the costume silk, but on the Sherpa, because of that nap and the dye tends to sit on top, I just take my fingers, and this is actually fun for kids. Just put little gloves on them and let them squinch it up, right? It's fun to get your hands messy. Okay. Okay. And again, see why I keep water nearby or a towel so I can wash my hands. Okay, and then the same thing. I would just, if I want lots of white, I'd leave it. I might put more yellow right there, but my yellow's gone, so I'm not going to worry about it for this. But you can kind of add more yellow. I like having a little bit of the yellow in there because it helps lighten it up. Okay, I scrunch it up, put it in my Michaels bag, let it sit 30 minutes to an hour, take it out, let it air dry. Then I would heat set it in my dryer for 25 minutes, and in the end, this is what we have. Okay, so this one I used just blue, pink, and yellow, but you can see that I got some of the green coming through. That's just from dyes mixing. And I like that this one ended up with a lot of white space in it. And then I'll show you how we turn it into a pumpkin. Okay, so remember our little 6-inch pumpkin over here. Okay, the stem is attached. So I just took a X-Acto knife and carefully cut the stem off, but keep the stem. Okay, so I just took my knife and kind of went around the edges. Be careful, because, I mean, they're hollow and pretty sturdy, but you just want to be careful with your knife. Okay, and then I'm going to flip this over. Look how pretty that is on the other side. Okay, then I'm just going to bring in my hot glue gun, and I'm going to squirt a little bit on the bottom of my pumpkin and stick it right in the middle of my square. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start bringing this fabric up and tucking it in the hole that I made on the top. So you can get messy with this glue. I know it's not very precise, but you'll see it all get hidden. And I just bring it up and tuck it into the top. Okay. Then I'm going to do the opposite side. Okay. Turn it so you can see. Bring it up, tuck it in the top. Okay. And the glue is just to help it stay on there. It's not incredibly crucial on the sides, I guess, but I like to do it every so often just to help it stay tight. Bring that one up and tuck it in the top. Do this one. Then, okay, now we're to this point. Now we got to do something with these little guys. So these we're just going to open up. And again, I'm going to put a little bit of glue and pull that. This is stretchy, a little bit stretchy, so you can pull it nice and tight up to the top. I'm actually going to put a little glue right in here too, and kind of hold it in the hole. Grab another glue stick. Okay, do it again. Tuck it in, and you would just keep going and going like that, okay? Till you're all the way tucked in and glued, and then you would put a little bit of glue on here, all the way around these edges, and just glue it right in the top, and just hold it there, press down and hold it there until it's dry, okay? I'm gonna show you what it looks like in the end. So here's my finished one. See all that white space, how pretty that is? I like how that one turned out. There's something to be said, like this one is really pretty too, with all the bright rainbows, but I also like this one. And then I wanted to show you the one I did with the costume silk. That's this one. This is a bigger pumpkin. So this one got more of a watercolor look because of that costume silk. The dyes bled a little bit more and faded a little bit more on there. I did this one damp as well. And then this is a little guy. This one's like a little tiny guy. And I just did one color on this one. So I just did the ocean color. But I think they make a cute little set all together, don't they? Sitting on a porch, right? Happy, colorful pumpkins for Halloween. So I hope you had fun in class. It's been really fun showing you these awesome dies. And does anyone have any more questions before we end? Is there anything else that I can answer?
No, I just think everyone's really enjoyed it. They're asking if they can get the craft pumpkins at Michael's, which they can.
Yeah.
And I mean, I, for one, can say, Shannon, I know what I'm going to be doing tonight or tomorrow. I love that watercolor look on that pumpkin. That's great.
I know. Isn't it beautiful? These would be great too. These could last all the way through Thanksgiving, really, because you could just do some fall colors on there and they'd look great on a Thanksgiving table even.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great idea.
It's fun. Think outside the box. Think outside of t-shirts. There's all kinds of things you can do. And I hope you guys have so much fun with tie-dye and that you stay safe and have fun.